All right, for those of you who do not know me, I am Carol Wally-Smith. I am a senior faculty member. Don't like that term. I prefer superlative faculty member in the business and technology area. My focus is on paralegal studies, business law, and business and ethics. But I also serve as your equity officer. And I've been in this role for a little over 20 years. But of course, when I started at the college, I was only 10. So that being said, you know why we're having this training. We're having this training because the college is implementing a new policy, service animals on campus. And we were actually in the process of working on this policy. Actually, I was in the process of working on this policy when the OCR complaint came through. For those of you who don't know what OCR is, it's the Office of Civil Rights, and they're charged with investigating any civil rights complaints by students at educational institutions. That's what OCR does. And as Dr. Paul told you, there was a complaint. I've had several inquiries by people wanting to know, okay, well, exactly what happened here? Well, what we had is we had a student who was allowed to have a service dog on campus. And Sandra's putting her hand up, and this particular student wasn't just in Sandra's classroom, she was in a couple of other classrooms. And what occurred over the spring semester is that the dog was barking, was not under the control of its handler, was disrupting the classroom, and then ultimately what happened is the dog lunged out at another student. And so with the fact that the dog did not seem to truly be under the control of its handler, that's why the dog was excluded from our campus. The student was not. The student was given every opportunity that she could take the courses online, that she was welcome to come to, to our classes. We would do everything to accommodate her, but the dog was excluded. So that's the story. And the OCR complaint, the nice thing is that we entered into this resolution. And this resolution, the reason why we entered into it is because where we were vulnerable, and it's what I recognized from the minute when I had the phone calls about this, is we did not have an expansive policy on service animals anymore. And across the nation, institutions are having to do this. They're having to expand beyond the exception to their no animals on campus, where we had no animals allowed on campus except for service animals. That's all we had. And that's not enough anymore. So that's why we were already in the process of doing this. Okay? I hope today that I'm going to address pretty much all of your questions before I open it up, because then I might just have to duck behind here and I'm going to let Sandra answer them. But I'm very much about the who, what, where, when, and why when it comes to doing training or presentations. So when I was thinking about this, the first thing I thought that you all would want to know, what is a service animal? A service animal under the ADA is any dog that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks for individuals with disabilities. In Florida, as well as some other states, miniature horses are also considered service animals. In fact, some of you might have even have read in the newspaper or seen online where at First Watch, the restaurant right here on 200, that a lady had her service miniature horse there with lunch with her. So in Florida, a miniature horse is also considered a service animal. So students and visitors to our campus, the public, anyone who has a disability or who's training, they can bring either a dog or a miniature horse. Okay? The key for it to be a service animal is that what they do has to be directly related to that individual's disability. So the question really then becomes, what does work or perform task mean? And the ADA defines it as a service animal must be trained to perform a specific action when needed to assist an individual with a disability. Now, does that really give you a whole lot of information? No, not really. So I have examples for you, okay? Examples of works or tasks that service animals can do. Some of them are readily apparent. Like, for example, if you have a dog that is assisting a person who's visually impaired or who's blind, or an individual who is deaf, or an individual who has mobility issues. It could be pulling a wheelchair, it could be retrieving objects. You know, that makes perfect sense. In fact, one of my colleagues showed me a picture and asked me, is this a service animal or is it a therapy animal? And from what she showed me, I said, that's a therapy animal, but I will get into that. What's more difficult for us than just seeing the service animals that you're used to, that you're probably thinking the individual who's visually impaired and is holding the harness and the dog is leading them around. It's what I like to put into, and what the ADA also calls, psychiatric dog task. And these are things that may not be readily apparent to you, that dogs have been trained to do. Dogs and miniature horses, apparently, can be trained to remind an individual with mental illness to take their medication. Now, where this comes in more for us is we have a burgeoning veterans population. And many of these veterans suffer what's called there you go, Absher, there you go, Davis, you were waiting for it. We're just going straight for PTSD, okay? They suffer from PTSD. So there are service animals that can help individuals with PTSD, and some of those particular tasks that they've been trained to do. One of them is called securing a perimeter. They will do a room search. They will let the individual know that where they're going into is safe. They can be trained to turn on lights. Now, more importantly, when it comes to us here, in addition to that securing the perimeter, are those animals that are trained to sense when an individual with PTSD is about to go into a full-fledged anxiety attack. These dogs have been trained to sense it. They have then been trained to work on calming that individual, to either stop the anxiety attack or lessen the impact of that anxiety attack. And that is probably what we're going to see more and more on this campus. And in this instance, that is what that particular student had as well. She had PTSD, and the dog was supposed to be for a calming influence. I wanted to talk about social signal dogs or sensory signal dogs, because this is also something that's not readily apparent that we may also see. These are dogs that are specifically trained for individuals who have autism. And what they do is they alert that individual that they are making repetitive movements that can be very distracting, like hand flapping. Individuals who have autism a lot of times will hand flap. And so these dogs are able to alert the individual, you're doing this repetitive movement, and they're able to stop that. And so we may see some of that on our campus as well. Now, of course, I've been hit left and right about the question, okay, well, what's the difference between an emotional support, therapy, comfort, or companion animals? And we have to go back again, what is the key for a service animal? It's specifically trained to perform tasks or work directly related to a person's disability. An emotional support dog, a therapy dog, a comfort dog, a companion dog, their presence is what is comforting. They haven't been trained to do anything. It's what my dogs are at home, except for I'm calling myself the service human these days, because I appear to be the one that's opening the door when they want to come in, when they want to go out. You know, the older Jack Russell, I want up here, I want down from here. My husband gets very, very irritated with that. So we're service humans. But these are not service animals. And I know the young lady who came to talk about UCF talked about the service ferret. I'm guessing probably that was more an emotional support animal. It wasn't something that was being allowed in the classroom, because it's dogs and miniature horses, everybody, for students. But you have some institutions that are allowing emotional support animals. It comes more into play with them being allowed in dorms, is what it is, allowed in the dorms. And I'm guessing that's probably what UCF was dealing with at that point. We don't really have that problem here, thank goodness. Okay? A therapy dog, where are you, Marcia? A therapy dog. Therapy dogs are the kind of dogs that go into hospitals, to assisted livings, to nursing homes. Colleges, like I know University of North Florida during exam week, they bring in therapy dogs into their library to just make all the students feel better. So That's what a therapy dog is. Again, it's not trained to do anything except for come and look at you and say, oh, pet me, please. I'll make you feel better. Because those of you who have animals, I don't know about you, when I pet my dogs, I feel better. I do. Okay? Of course, Absher over there, it's her cat Ernie that provides her with that comfort, even though she has the 2 other dogs. So I'm sorry, Nancy. She is so going to get me after this. I think comfort or companion animals, I don't really need to explain that to you all. You all get that. Okay. So then the question then becomes, well, do they have to be identified, and where do they get to go? So service animals require any identification? Guess what? No. Marcia, I just now answered that question for you. No, they do not require any type of identification under the law. Nothing. Nothing. We can't require it. Even in our draft policy to OCR, I included in there that we recommend that you identify. OCR took its big red pen and said, nope, can't have that. Can't have that. So they do not have to wear any type of identification. So somebody's making a lot of money off the internet by selling all of these vests and harnesses and things when they're not even required. So do they have to be on a leash? Do they have to have a harness? Do they have to have a collar? Do they have to have something? Guess what the answer is to that? No, they do not. Do not. But think about it. Somebody who has mobility issues or doesn't have the use of their hands, think about it. They can't control the animal with their hands with a collar or harness. It makes sense. But those dogs that you see, they're under a different type of control, usually a voice control. So no, we can't require leashes, harness, collars, or vests either. Well, where do they get to go? Guess what? Everywhere. Anywhere we get to go, they are allowed. Anywhere they get to go. We tried putting in there that we could exclude them from places where the health, safety, and welfare of the dog or the health, safety, welfare of the other individuals was all, and guess what OCR did there? They said no. They said no. We cannot exclude them from those places. Do they have to be registered with the college? Again, Saul sitting down here shaking his head no. No, they are not required to be registered at all. So how do we know if we have service animals on campus? Well, a lot of them will be readily apparent, but the ones readily apparent, again, you have somebody who has a mobility issue or is vision impaired, that makes sense because you can see it. But what about these others that maybe are the psychiatric or the sensory signal? In those cases, we're allowed to ask 2 questions. 2 questions. The first one being, is the animal required because of a disability? The second question we can ask is, what work or task has the animal been trained to perform? That's the way we will know if it's a service animal or not. That's all we're required to ask under the law. I also think it's really important for us to know what we cannot do. So we can ask those 2 questions, and then we just have to realize that there are service animals out there that are doing things beyond what would just be readily apparent to us. So what are we not allowed to do? Well, guess what? We cannot ask the person, what is your disability? We can only ask the question, is this animal required because of a disability? Okay? Cannot ask about their individual disability. Can't require documentation. We can't require specific information. We can't ask the handler to have the dog perform the task for us. And again, we can't ask them to register with the Office of Access and Disability or any other office on the campus. We also had that in our draft policy, that we recommended that they would at least contact to let us know. And OCR, you all get the picture, OCR said, no, little red with the little comments all to the right there. And so it's been a learning experience for me and for others that have helped me, with this policy. Okay, because I'll go back to that. All right, just to kind of give you in mind who gets to have service dogs on campus: students with disabilities, visitors with disabilities, employees with disabilities, and service animal trainers. So third parties can come on our campus with the dogs. They are allowed. And they are all subject to our animals on campus, policies, service animals on campus policy. Now, when do we get to exclude a service animal? There are two situations. The first one is what we experienced and had the claim with OCR. Again, we were vulnerable with OCR because we didn't have a policy set out. Okay? The animal is out of control and the owner-handler does not take effective action to control the animal. And examples would be uncontrolled barking, wandering, displaying aggressive behavior. Now here's the kicker with the law. The word "and" is extremely powerful. So, an animal, service animal, can be barking. If it's a horse, it's going to be named in your classroom. Okay? If the owner-handler gets it under control, no, we're not going to exclude it. It would have to have a pattern of behavior. That's something we always talk about in the law, that you have to have a pattern of behavior. It can't be just one instance. Okay? So remember, ands are really important. The second is the animal is not housebroken, not potty trained. Somebody's lighting up my text because I feel it on my iWatch. Yeah, I know who you are out there. I know who's doing this. So the animal's not housebroken. Okay, so that is grounds to exclude them. What do you do if a student in your classroom comes to you and says, I am deathly afraid of dogs, or I am so allergic to dogs, I can't be in this classroom. That dog can't be in this classroom. Do we exclude the dog? No. No. Yeah, you've got to find another place for that student. And what you should do, where's Victoria Colelli? Yeah, I'm giving them all your information, Victoria. They're going to call you instead of me. Victoria Colelli, she is our ADA coordinator for the students in public. So if you have that, you need to refer that student to her, because we will have to accommodate that student. All right? So what do you do if it's an employee who comes with that complaint, that they have a fear of dogs or that they're highly allergic to dogs? Where's Dr. Benlolo? Where are you, Henry? I know I saw you in it. There you are. You all get to call Dr. Henry Benlolo, not Carol W. Smith, Dr. Henry Benlolo, because he is the ADA coordinator for employees. Okay? That's who you contact for that. All right? What do you do if there are concerns about the dog's behavior, toileting, health, or handling of the animal? Well, you call Victoria if it's dealing with the student or the public. If it's an employee, then you're going to deal with Dr. Benlolo on that. But one thing you should first do is talk to the handler. Talk to the handler first. Okay? Now, a student or an employee has a discrimination complaint regarding a service animal. Who do you call? You call me. I was going to put Absher's name up here and her contact information, but then I thought that might be pushing it a little bit on that. So I am supposed to be keeping this straight. This is very hard for me, for those who know me very well. What happens, though, and this could occur, if a service animal appears to be mistreated or abused, which can happen. In that case, again, if it's a student or the public, you contact Victoria. If it's an employee, then you contact Henry, and then they will then contact the appropriate authorities. So first look into it, because it could be that where you think a dog's not being fed, maybe the dog has a medical issue, and that's the reason why it is so thin. So they're going to use their reasonable and rational caps before they're going to contact the appropriate service. Okay. So anticipating certain questions, Marcia, I did a frequently asked questions, and this also came from things that were being asked of me in the process of working on this particular policy. Who is responsible for the care of that animal? The handler. The handler is. The college has no responsibility. No responsibility. The handler, the owner, is responsible for the service animal. If someone's, let's see how well y'all paid attention. If someone's dog calms them when having an anxiety attack, does this qualify as a service animal? All right, Cooper, I see I forgot an A there. Exactly. If they are specifically trained that they can sense an anxiety attack is coming on and their job is to help calm the individual and to lessen the impact of the attack. Y'all were listening. Very A for you.
Excellent. But I got a quick question about that.
Okay.
If a student
Has a potty accident, then the owner handler is responsible for that. But if you are talking someone who is in a wheelchair, has mobility issues, that is blind, for Pete's sake, try a little kindness and help them. And one accident does not mean we're going to bar that animal by any means. Okay. Cooper, I should have known. What if the animal, see, Marcia, I predicted, what if the service animal bites someone? Well, there's a couple of things we have to look at with that. First off, the question of exclusion and the question of liability, and then Marcia brought up about insurance. All right, so there's three. First off, can we exclude because it bites somebody? It depends. It depends, because there are some dogs that are trained to sense if somebody is a threat, especially when you have individuals that have service dogs, somebody who has maybe been physically abused or has been sexually abused, that I know y'all may not believe it, but there are service dogs out there that can sense if someone is going to harm and if they feel they're a threat to their owner handler. So that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to bar it just because it bites, because there could have been a legitimate threat to that individual. So that's the first prong. Second prong, who is liable for the bite? Not the college. The owner handler is liable for the bite. That all goes into what's called the Florida Dog Bite Statute. Does it mean the college won't get sued? No, of course we're going to get sued because it happened on our campus. Of course we're going to get sued. But our defense is we don't own the dog. It was a service dog under the ADA, and we got the OCR backing on this. We are not responsible, for the liability if a dog bites. But yeah, we're going to get sued. Absolutely. Third question that Marcia brought up about insurance. Doesn't fall under our insurance. If a dog bites somebody, it's going to come under their own. Yeah. And service animals are not required to have insurance. Okay. They're not required to have insurance. Liability is on the handler. It's on the handler. However, speaking as an attorney, I would probably make the recommendation that the college pony up on helping pay for the doctor's visit or the rabies shots or whatever maybe is possibly needed to make us look good in the light of the law with that, to do the right thing. Others might totally disagree with me on that. Okay. What if the service dog damages college property? The owner, the handler is responsible. The college isn't responsible for that. They are responsible for any type of damage. In other words, say that they take out an entire computer up in one of the computer labs in Building 40. That student's going to be responsible for it. But realistically, what's going to happen? The college is going to replace it because the student's not going to have the money to do it. But they are the ones that are responsible for that. Ron wants to know if a student comes into his classroom, does he have to ask them if they are registered with the Office of Access and Disability Services? Am I calling that the right thing now, Victoria? Access and Disability Services, correct? Is that? Just disability services, okay. And the answer to that question is no. We cannot require them, and that is not one of the legal questions to ask them. You may ask them two things. Anybody remember what the first thing is? Is this, do you need this dog for a disability? Second question, what task or job does the service animal perform? It's the only thing we can ask them.
So I might be the first person to know that that student is wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you may be the only one who knows.
Is there a difference between saying train for a task or what task is it trained?
You would do that. She just asked, is there a difference between trained for a task or
What task is the service animal trained?
what task? No.
Okay.
No.
By asking the specific task, you're going to discern the disability.
No, you're asking what, is this dog trained
To perform a task.
to perform a task, a specific task?
But not what is the actual.
No, you can't ask them what the actual task is. Sorry, I misinterpreted your question. Right. Yeah, you can't ask them what the task is they perform. It's just, does it perform a task? Whatever the sheet says, guys, that's what it is. Okay, what the sheet says, that's what you can ask. Just so you know, the dog, you can't ask them if the dog's trained. And service dogs can be in training, and they can be in training in your classroom as well. But even if it's in training, it still has to be under the control of its handler. And that was the biggest problem with this particular dog that was in Sandra's classroom, and I'm not sure who else. It was in, I think, 3 different classrooms. It was a service dog that was in training. And honestly, under those circumstances, the trainer who gave her the dog she did a tremendous disservice to that particular student, because if you suffer from PTSD, the last thing you need is anything that's going to be a stressor. And those of you that have dogs or any other animals, from horses, when they're not listening to you, you talk about one stressor right there. One stressor. Yes. The question is, would you be able to receive any advance notice that you have? No. No. The question is, what do they do when they have a student that goes into a surgical place and they're not allowing the dogs in there? That's exactly why we put in our draft policy about there would be circumstances where they would not, be allowed. The odds are, if that did occur, I imagine the hospital has its own little rules, and that would be our defense, is that this off-campus, because of health safety, that would be common sense. That would be our defense. That would be our defense. Are you allowed to suggest that they sit in a particular place in the classroom? And the answer to that is no. If they request a specific place in the classroom, yes, because that's ADA. Yes, so if they request a particular, yes, you do. Absolutely, you have to make reasonable accommodations. Yes. The question is, do I have to ask these questions if it's not readily apparent? No, you don't have to ask these questions. And the hope is that most that come in is that the dogs are well behaved. This was just kind of an isolated incident, but apparently not, because you apparently had that. But some of my colleagues were talking about how they've had service animals. Some of us have it in there. So again, it's worst case scenarios. You have a dog or a miniature horse that is misbehaving, in your classroom. What do you do? But if they're not causing any problems, then you don't have to ask them these questions. You don't have to open that door. One thing that is also going to be required from all of this is that the service animals on campus policy is going to have to go into student handbooks, faculty handbooks, all of nursing handbooks. I know nursing, you all have a different, it has to go in all those different handbooks from there. The best thing is to educate your classroom and say, I understand we have a service animal in here, right now, and that we're going to just continue class the best that we can. That's the best you can do. And then after that, just say to the student, your dog does not seem to be under control. Is everything okay? Be empathetic with that individual. But then you call Victoria Colelli. Yeah. the class decorum, it all has with about students, but it may be wise for all of us to include with class decorum that we do have service dogs on campus, and that, you know, under the law, we have to allow these service dogs, and we will do the best, you know, to make sure that the integrity of the classroom stays intact when there is an animal. And then, you know, I don't know what happened in Sandra's classroom exactly when the dog was barking. You know, what did your students ask you questions? Did they look at you, like what's going on? And
in fact, they came and complained after.
right, and that's typically what they'll do, is they'll complain afterward, and that's pretty much when you just have to say, you know, under the ADA, we allow service dogs on campus, and there's limited, you know, scenarios where they can be excluded, but that I assure you, I will work to keep the integrity of this classroom, and if it continues to be a problem, I will be contacting the ADA coordinator. Yeah, the question is, are you not supposed to touch a service animal? That's absolutely correct. They're working. You're not to touch them. Generally, if you've ever come across individuals who have service animals and you try to pet them, they will tell you matter-of-factly to their face that this animal is working. It is not for you to be petting. But again, if you wanted to include that in your syllabus, that's not a bad idea. That, you know, we have service animals in our classroom, and that you need to be reminded that these are not pets, they're not comfort, they're here to do a job, and you're not to pet them, interact with them in any way. In time, we can have all these service animals on campus, and we will not know exactly how many are on, and that is correct until there is a big change in what the ADA says or what the OCR says as well. And you never know. Next year, the OCR might say, well, hey, it's okay that you have them register. You never ever know. But as it stands right now, OCR says no. So yes, that scenario can happen. The question was that at any given time, we can have all these service animals on campus, and we will not know exactly how many are on. And that is correct until there is a big change in what the ADA says or what the OCR says as well. And you never know. Next year, the OCR might say, well, hey, it's okay that you have them register. You never ever know. But as it stands right now, OCR says no. So yes, that scenario can happen. Again, the purpose of this training is information. Information that you know that we're about to have a service animal on campus policy, that it is something that is occurring more often than not on our campus, and knowing, you know, what to look for, that, you know, it may not be readily apparent, and what you can ask and what you cannot ask. That's the important, and then the contact information of if you have questions, who you contact about this issue.